started. So again, thank you very much for joining tonight. My name is Ray Bramson. Happy Affordable Housing Month. We're here tonight with some leaders from our housing system and the great work in Santa Clara County to talk and learn a little bit more about affordable housing. What is it? Who's doing it? What's going on? And what does it look like? So we're going to have a panel discussion with some folks from the county, the city, and our development community. You'll have the opportunity throughout to ask questions. We ask that if you're asking questions that come through the chat, or if there's a burning follow-up, you can also raise your hand and we can take a live question as well. But we're going to start off before meeting all of our distinguished panel by taking a quick look at the wonderful wide world of supportive housing, of affordable housing here in San Jose, and we've got a great video to share with you right now. Great, thank you for that. So you got to see three pretty incredible developments, and in our community we've been building thousands and thousands of housing units thanks to the voters and the hard work of the people here on this call right now. So I want to give you a chance to meet some of these folks and just give a brief introduction to each. So let's start off with the Deputy Director of the City of San Jose Housing Department. Rachel, how are you doing tonight?
Thank you, Ray. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rachel Vanderveen, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Housing Department with the City of San Jose. And in that role, I have a variety of different responsibilities, and they include managing our tenant and landlord programs, and also our new production program, which is really what our focus is of our conversation tonight. I also manage our asset management program, which oversees compliance for all of the existing affordable housing that San Jose has built over time. And I also work with our policy teams and administration teams to really be thinking about how to support affordable housing development in San Jose.
Great, Rachel, thanks for being with us tonight. Natalie Monk, over at the County of Santa Clara Office of Supportive Housing. Why don't you say hi to the group?
Hi, Ray. Good evening, everyone. So I'm Natalie Monk. I'm the division manager for the Housing and Community Development team at the Office of Supportive Housing with the county. So it's a very long title, and basically what that means is I do financing for affordable housing. That's what my team and I do. And that looks like a lot of different things. We have our supportive housing development program, NOFA, where we intake applications from different developers. We do some amount of development of affordable housing on county-owned land as well. Asset management, as Rachel alluded to. And there's a variety of other housing programs that we manage as well. So thanks, Ray.
Good to have you here, Natalie. And Carolyn, I saw Resources for Community Development, RCD's name up on one of those buildings. You want to introduce yourself to the groups? Tell them a little bit about what you do.
Sure, happy to. Good evening, everybody. My name's Carolyn Bookhart, and I head up the real estate development department for an organization called Resources for Community Development, or RCD, is kind of the easier way to know us. And we are a not-for-profit organization that develops and owns affordable housing long-term. And so we're pretty active in San Jose and Santa Clara County. We work with the city and the county quite often. We also develop a lot of properties in the East Bay as well. And I'll probably talk a little bit more, but we're really the folks that are kind of building and owning affordable housing. And Quetzal Gardens is one that we just recently completed. So that was in the video in San Jose, which I can talk about more as well. Glad to be here.
Great. As you can see, we've got an experienced and distinguished panel of speakers for you tonight. So I think we're going to have an interesting conversation. Just as a reminder, again, if you hear things that raise questions in your mind, I'm happy to bring those questions to life in real time. So just enter them into the chat and I will direct them to the appropriate parties. But let's start off the discussion with you, Rachel. So, parks, police, roads, that's what I know a city is typically involved in, but affordable housing, what is affordable housing and what is the city's role in making it happen?
Yeah, thank you, Ray. I think a good place to start, like you said, is what is affordable housing? So what it is it's housing within our city that has restricted incomes and rents. And so what that means is that for people to qualify to live there, they need to provide documentation of their income. So like their W-2s and that type of documentation that shows what their income is. And they need to basically be low income. In our county, the middle range of income is actually, it can feel a little high, but it's actually over like $100,000. So people can qualify to live in affordable housing who may have very, great jobs and careers, but they don't necessarily make that much money. And so what happens is they can actually qualify to live in the affordable housing, and then their rents are restricted to a certain amount. That's actually a formula of, so it's built so that they generally are not paying too much more than 30% of their income on rent. And so their rents are restricted over time, and they're able to live in San Jose in a place where they're not spending as much of their money on rent, and they can actually provide for their families in other ways, and have funds for food and healthcare and transportation and all of that in a balanced, healthy way. So it creates stability for families and for seniors and for any population that we're supporting, and allows them to really call San Jose home and know that they can live there for as long as they need to, and in a stable rent environment. All right, so you also asked me, what does San Jose do about that? So we play many roles, actually, when I think about that. when a developer is interested in providing affordable housing in San Jose, they interact with the city in multiple ways. The basic ways are going to be, first of all, with the planning department. They're going to be coming to the city and receive permits and entitlements, basically permission to build their building. So that's a big role for the city. Additionally, if they're seeking funding and financing to actually bring the affordable housing development forward, then they actually apply to the housing department for funding. And that's where our team comes in and evaluates the development and takes a look at who they're going to be serving and for, who is the target population and what kind of income levels are they going to be serving. And then we provide loans to them so at favorable rates so that they can move forward with the financing for the development.
Nice, Rachel. So I mean, the answer basically is that you guys do a lot. That makes sense, involved in all aspects. So Natalie, tell me, County Office of Supportive Housing, I mean, what the heck is supportive housing anyway? What do you guys do over there?
Yeah, great question. So we are the Office of Supportive Housing. So our mission is really to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. So in a nutshell, it's to try to end homelessness. So when we talk about supportive housing, it's really taking affordable housing and all the concepts that Rachel just talked about and pairing those units with supportive services. So if somebody is coming in off of the streets or they were experiencing homelessness, they were unhoused, we give them a unit. They pay the rent that they can afford at 30% of their income. And then it's not just giving them that unit and giving them a home. It's about also providing supportive services that set them up for success.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, I hear two significant public institutions that are really committed to this work, but it doesn't sound like either of you two are really building anything. So Carolyn, is that where RCD comes in? Tell me a little bit about your work.
Sure, that's exactly right. So we work with folks like the city and the county and also the state and lenders to actually put a whole financing package together to build the housing. So we're involved with finding sites that are, appropriate for developing affordable housing. A lot of what we do, there's a lot of different types of affordable housing. What we do is multifamily apartments, rental housing. There are groups out there like Habitat for Humanity or Land Trust that also do different models, sometimes smaller single family homes or duplexes. But a lot of this work is in kind of the multifamily space and apartment buildings. And so we really work in, finding appropriate sites. What we try to do is really build housing that is located with good access to good amenities, because that's really important for helping people connect to schools, connect to jobs, connect to transit, connect to parks and school and, grocery stores and things like that. So we really look for sites like that that are going to be a good location for folks to live and thrive and grow their families. And then a lot of what we do, as Rachel mentioned, is that, we, cost this much, say, for example, to build the building. But what we're trying to do is really rent them out at much lower than market rate rents. So they're affordable for folks that might have lower incomes. And so we have to combine a lot of different public funding in order to make up the difference, basically, from what it costs to build and what we can actually rent it out, to folks. So that's a big part of what we do is applying to the city and to the county and the state and trying to assemble all the financing so that we can actually build the buildings. And then we also do a lot of community engagement. So when we're looking at a particular location, we really want to meet with the neighbors, community organizations, folks that really are part of that community to make sure that this is an appropriate site for our building and that we're really incorporating folks' input in designing and developing that building. So that's a big part of what we do up front. And then we design the building, we get all the financing together, we oversee construction, which often takes, about 2 years to build. And then we sort of market the building and try to communicate to as many partners as we can, to the community, to the city, to social service agencies, to really get the word out, because there's a huge demand for this housing. So like right now, we're often getting, thousands of applications for our buildings. And so, we really try to make sure that people are hearing about it so that everybody gets an opportunity to try to live in these buildings. And so we lease it up, and then we also own it long term. And so, we really, that's kind of goes back to the community engagement part, is that we're really, we're sort of part of the community. And so we want to set that relationship up well in the beginning. And then long term, we want to be good neighbors. We want to be good property owners. And so we have property management folks. We also partner with resident services agencies to make sure our residents have lots of support services if they need them to live stably. And that's kind of what we do. So we're constantly trying to create more housing because there's a huge demand for it, and then kind of owning and operating and supporting our residents that live in there once they're in operations.
Well, thank goodness you guys are doing what you do, Carolyn, and building the homes that you do. As you mentioned, there's tremendous demand. The reality is there's tens of thousands of people just in Santa Clara County who are living paycheck to paycheck, extremely low income, making 30% or less of the area median income. And they're one financial emergency away from homelessness. I think one of the things that our voters did in 2016 was pass Measure A $950 million affordable housing bond that was really a game changer in a lot of different ways. Natalie, your department is responsible for administering this bond fund. We're 6 years into a 10-year bond. Can you tell me how things are going, what we've been able to do with it?
Yeah, they're going great, Ray. That's the short answer. The long answer is, at this point, we've committed $588 million just towards multifamily development of new homes. We have 4 projects that are completed in San Jose that are new construction, and we have 9 under construction right now. So when we're thinking about completed units just within San Jose, that's 350 units. But when we consider everything that's under construction right now, it's 1,200 units that are either complete or are going to be complete soon. And then we have another 1,400 units in our pipeline in San Jose that we've approved, that the County Board of Supervisors have approved, that will come online next. So we have this enormous pipeline that gets people housed. So it's going great.
That is tremendously exciting to hear. I saw in the 3 developments that we looked at, Lee Avenue, Quetzal, and Emmanuel Sobrado, all Measure A developments, all have both city and county funding. And, while Measure A has been a huge source for us, I know City of San Jose, you guys have been in this work for a long time, and you've made some great strides to add more resources recently too. Rachel, can you talk a little bit about that, city's commitment?
Yeah, so an exciting thing that happened actually March 2020. I know there were a lot of exciting things that happened that month, but we don't want to lose sight of early in the month. The voters of San Jose approved Measure E, which we were very excited to have happen. So Measure E, it's a real estate transfer tax. So that means, and it actually applies to real estate transactions that are above $1 million. So it's kind of like tiered up for larger value transactions. And so it's designed to be paid when those transactions happen, but it's dedicated to addressing affordable housing and homeless issues in San Jose. So we are very excited because, for many years, we've really been looking for this type of source of income that can really provide stability to our programs and allow us to build an ongoing pipeline and stream of affordable housing over time. And so we were very fortunate to work with the county and all of their Measure A, really kind of, I would say, got this whole process going, and more excitement and energy around building affordable housing in our county, but also in our city. And now we really feel like Measure E is picking up that momentum. So it's a really important tool, and we're just very fortunate that we had that measure passed right when it was. We also have recently, the city council passed a commercial linkage fee, which is an interesting concept. But the idea is that as we have commercial development where people are bringing jobs to San Jose, it creates a need for more housing. And so the commercial linkage fee actually is a requirement on commercial development to provide funding to our department to build more affordable housing, which will be needed as more jobs come to our area. So those are examples of recent changes that we really feel like are going to be helping us in the long term.
Excellent, Rachel. I mean, we're so lucky in this community to have both the city and the county contributing and finding real sources of funding to make housing happen. It's expensive, it's time consuming, there's a lot of challenges. I'm a little interested to hear though, Carolyn, why is it still hard to build housing? What are the challenges and barriers that you're seeing on your end?
Yeah, it's a challenging, thanks for asking that question. It's definitely a challenging process, and it honestly takes many years between kind of finding a location and actually getting all the financing together to start construction. And so I think, and especially now that, well, inflation, I think most people know, there's a lot of inflation right now, and that's something that's been happening a lot on the construction side. And so there's a couple pieces. So one is, construction costs have been rapidly increasing. And so that just means there's so much more financing, public funding, and subsidies that are needed just to get enough money to build the buildings. And so, and some of that, is inflation that I think we're all feeling. But, some of it is also just not enough folks working in the construction labor market. And so I think one thing just that could be helpful and is trying to get more kind of job training programs, apprenticeship programs to really bring more people into the construction labor market, because that's definitely been a strain on our ability to build things and kind of the cost related to that. And then, kind of related to that is just all the financing. And so because everything is so expensive, as I mentioned, a lot of what we have to do is kind of layer all these different types of funding, and there's typically not enough for the need. And so that takes a lot of time. We do work with the city and we work with the county. And then we also, apply for a lot of funding at the state level. And all of those different programs are not always aligned with each other. And so their timing might be off, or the kind of the rules associated with getting the financing to match up with your project might not be aligned. And so that can actually take quite a bit of time kind of working through that process. And then the last thing that I think is really important that is an ongoing challenge, especially developing housing for formerly homeless. So we do, we develop housing for families, for seniors, but we do have a lot of focus on formerly homeless. And that's, I think most people know, is something that's really been a growing issue, and I think is a big issue for most people in the state. And really, a lot of folks that are coming out of homelessness have different types of disabilities and different challenges that require a lot of support to stay, in housing stably. And so what's really important is not only the financing just to kind of build the buildings, which is obviously very critical, but ongoing funding for supportive services and rental subsidies to really help folks that maybe aren't able to work or have a job or need, just need mental health services or, different types of support services to help them live, a healthy, stable life in our housing. And so a lot of times that can be a challenge because I think a lot of the funding kind of looks a lot at the building, which again is important, but there's kind of a long-term support services to keep folks housed and healthy is an ongoing challenge as well.
So just follow up a little bit on that thread, Carolyn. First, go back to you, Natalie. And, I think we talked about Measure A, but maybe talking a little bit more about what else the county does to really support and make sure that these buildings are funded the way they need to be to function and succeed over time.
Yeah, so all of our projects need more than one source of funds. I mean, the name of the game here is leveraging. So it's really about creating partnerships and being able to leverage funds in addition to what we have locally at the county level. So Rachel mentioned Measure E, that is a fantastic source of funds. I think we're really lucky to have San Jose as our partner on so many of our projects. For Measure A, we're about 75% of the way through our bond at this point. So we're looking at what other sources can we leverage. So we try to take every opportunity at the state level to bring in state resources to pair with our local funds. So that's one thing we're doing. Our loans are typically structured to include some type of repayment. That's part of it. There's these unique opportunities at the state level, like Project Home Key, where we're able to identify hotels that we can convert into affordable housing and bring in state level home key funds to support that work. So it's what we're doing here locally, but we also have so many partners in this work that allow us to leverage additional funds.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, support, funding for services, bringing in partners like the Housing Authority provides project-based vouchers to pay subsidies to keep people there, figuring out, all the various sources you guys have at the county to pay for services, but how to untangle them and make them work in new developments. It's a tricky, complicated game. I think the other side of it that's hard, and Rachel, this is coming back to you, is I think as good as anyone on this call, that every development it's not an easy or straightforward path to get it entitled, approved, and move it forward. We see lots of opposition from a whole bunch of different sources. What's the city doing to help with this? Are bills like SB 35, the streamlining bill, helping you move projects faster? What's your philosophy on getting things approved and built as quickly as possible?
Yeah, it's really a good question, Ray. Thank you. So the state has really been moving forward with very interesting legislation that has really kind of challenged the local government to think about how we move forward with approving affordable housing development. And so we have in the state of California, we have SB 35 and AB 2162. And what we have found is that these are very powerful pieces of legislation. What happens when a development comes and applies to move forward using one of these streamlining bills is that they actually go through what's called a ministerial process versus a typical planning process, which means that everything is an objective decision. So ministerial just means like you kind of go through a list and you say yes or no, and does it fit? Does it match all the guidelines that are set out? And if it does, then it's approved. So essentially, it just really makes it a very straightforward process. And we have learned and grown, through trying to understand how to administer all of this. But we've also seen that these processes have actually really taken the whole time of getting approvals down significantly, to the point of reducing the time it takes by like 30% in some cases, and really just taking months off the process. So we are really supportive of these different tools, and we have found them to be extremely effective. So it's exciting, and we're just really happy that I guess we're glad that the state is a real partner in this too, and is helping to find ways that we can all work together to make affordable housing happen as soon as it possibly can. So we're very supportive of these changes in San Jose.
It's fantastic, Rachel. Great answer. I want to go to the audience really quickly, and just a reminder, got a great panel here. If you have questions, please feel free to ask. I see one that's come through right now, and the question is there any single family homes for affordable housing? So, we know a lot about single family homes. How does that exist in the realm and world of affordable housing? And Natalie, I think with your background, you've got a little experience in this from your Habitat for Humanity days. You want to talk a little bit about what exists in that space?
Sure. So Habitat for Humanity definitely works in that space. They buy single family lots that are vacant, or they buy existing single family homes and then renovate them or build new in the case of vacant lots, and then sell homes to low income individuals at an affordable sales price. So that does exist, but it's a much more limited program. In the world of affordable housing, I think it's fair to say that the low income housing tax credit program is the most powerful tool in our toolbox. So the majority of affordable housing projects are LIHTC projects. And that has a certain look and feel. It's typically multifamily, new, beautiful apartment buildings. So I think in the world of affordable housing, we really need to maximize that route, that path, but it's certainly not the only tool that we have available to us. So there's programs like Habitat for Humanity's program. There are below market rate programs that many of our partner jurisdictions operate, where local jurisdictions place obligations on market rate builders who are building in their jurisdictions, and then a certain number of units need to be set aside as affordable housing. So in the case of new subdivisions, that could be single family homes. It could be, units within a condominium development or apartment buildings. So there are many flavors of affordable housing, but a lot of it honestly does come down to financing and what's available.
It's very, Natalie, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, Carolyn, get out your magic wand and tell me, you can grant one wish. How do we build more housing now? What's one major change we could make to make housing happen?
I wish I wasn't limited to one, but no, I think I might actually say two, but I think the biggest thing is the financing. I think we've mentioned that like it just takes so many different sources of financing to kind of put the puzzle together to be able to build our housing. And that is what really takes so long to build it. I want to just kind of echo Rachel's comment about the state laws around streamlining entitlements. I mean, that is really powerful. And so I feel like that's been a tool that's really solved a lot of our ability to get projects entitled. And I would say, it can definitely reduce time more than 30%. I mean, I think in some cases it could reduce it from 2 years to 6 months. So it's really dramatic. And so that's been great for us, but then it still can take 2 or 3 years or more to get all the financing together. So I think there's a few pieces on that. I think, there's local funding, that just needs to kind of keep happening. Like, I think it's wonderful that San Jose has now got kind of an ongoing source of funding through the recent transfer tax and commercial linkages fees. The county, as Natalie mentioned, they're running through their A1, which is so surprising because it was such a wonderful resource for us. But, the need just keeps growing. And then, like I said, I think the sort of the support, ongoing services funding and rental subsidies. So it's kind of a lot of things around the financing is what is so challenging for us right now.
Yeah, financing. I hear you. Now I've got a question for you. So Measure A, we've talked a lot about deeply affordable housing today and supportive housing. Measure A also contains a lot of some funding for moderate income housing, teacher, some home ownership. How are you going to go about getting that type of those types of initiatives forward? And B, why do you think it's important that it's built?
Oh, Ray, asking me the tough questions. So we do have funding set aside within Measure A for homeownership, for moderate income housing, for things that are more broad than the projects that we've talked about so far this evening. We currently have a program called Empower Homebuyers, and we have $25 million committed to that program, and it's down payment assistance. It's mostly targeted towards moderate income homebuyers. And the basic idea is if you can give folks who are moderate income, who have kind of a median amount of income within the county, but who can't get a down payment together to buy a house, and give them just a little bit of help, they can actually buy a home in Santa Clara County, which is amazing. The median home price is $1.2 million. And the idea that you could just give somebody or lend somebody $200,000, $100,000, and that gets them across the finish line. So we do have Empower Home Buyers in place now, but we're looking to expand our programs. So I'm happy to announce that we just found out a couple weeks ago that we were awarded $5 million in Cal Home funding from the state. So that's money that we can leverage with Measure A that can help us do more with home ownership. So we're looking at ways to spend that money. The money we were awarded is mortgage assistance from the state. So we're thinking about, can we partner with local jurisdictions to get deeper affordability on BMR units? What are the opportunities where we can make homeownership more accessible to folks who wouldn't otherwise be able to access it? So those are some of the things that we're thinking about. And we're also looking at cooperative housing. Cooperative housing is so interesting to me. I could talk for ages about cooperative housing, but I won't. But it's a new housing type under our NOFA, and it's an opportunity to bring some amount of equity and some type of home ownership to extremely low income households that could never otherwise dream of owning a home in Santa Clara County. I mean, $1.2 million is so far out of reach for so many households. So I think even though our most powerful tool is low-income housing tax credits, we have to look at other opportunities too. I mean, I think we really have to put our foot on the gas for all these different things at once and just maximize what we're doing. So thanks, Ray.
Thank you, Natalie. So Rachel, City of San Jose, 94% of your residential land, according to the New York Times, is designated for single-family homes. Land prices everywhere going up. There is not really a lot of available residential dirt anywhere in the city. And, you're driving to try and find housing opportunities in higher resource areas. Why do people keep making a job so hard for you? That's not my question. That's a joke. My real question is, what opportunities are out there right now to, I know you got some good news from the state about an application pretty recently, maybe share some of that, but how can we make more housing come alive more quickly? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a really great fundamental question, because anytime we want to build housing, we need a site, right? We have to start somewhere. And I kind of joke with some of my colleagues in planning. I meet with all kinds of people who are thinking about things. And about a year ago, I met with a group who said, we just wanted to meet with you because we're looking for a rectangular site in San Jose. That's what we really like, nice rectangles. And we're just wondering if you have any that we could build on. And I just had to laugh, because I was like, first of all, there aren't very many rectangles left. I mean, there really aren't any, that is ideal. But I mean, there's just really limited sites, period. So instead, we are trying to think outside of that box, outside of the rectangular, dirt or whatever that is, that it just doesn't, it's not there. It's gone in San Jose. It doesn't exist. And so instead, we're trying to think creatively. So one example is, as you mentioned, Ray, we just received an award from the state for a home key application. And what's creative about this is that we are actually acquiring an existing hotel. So we're rethinking where affordable housing goes. And in this case, we're going to buy an existing hotel. We're going to be able to use that hotel for an interim period of time, probably 3 to 5 years, to immediately house people, because the hotel is built and we can move people in right away and house people who are now who are homeless and are living on our streets. And so that's an immediate impact. But beyond that, long term, we can actually look at the site that the hotel is on and figure out, how can we look at redevelopment of that site? And so how can we think about new development right there in a place where, for many years that's been a hotel site, but why can't it be a multifamily affordable housing site in the future? So that's an example. But we're also thinking, we're actually working with the city itself. The city is a property owner across the city, right? And has kind of unique opportunities. One of the ideas that we are working through right now is taking a look at a large site where we have a community center right now. The community center actually sits on a site that used to be a high school. And so it's very low density. Everything's one story. It has long hallways and very big parking lot. And so we're thinking, well, what's the opportunity here? Is there a way for us to rebuild the existing community space, but on top of that, create housing that can go, 4, 5, 6 stories high, whatever could be, would fit there in that place. And so we're really trying to rethink. So in both of these cases, instead of looking for a brand new site, we're looking to reuse, right? We're looking at a hotel or a community center, and we're trying to rethink, how can we actually redevelop these places and create more capacity for affordable housing in places where we haven't been looking before.
That's the type of out of the box thinking that I think we're going to need going forward. It's going to be a tough haul. Coming to the end, just a reminder, if you have questions for our panelists, please feel free to put them into the chat. I want to give everybody just one last chance to think about those questions and let each of our panelists say their kind of closing remarks. So Carolyn, let's start with you. What's on the horizon for RCD?
Great. Yeah, well, thanks for including me and including us in this panel. And I actually kind of wanted to just leave folks with some takeaways about, how maybe folks that are listening might be able to get involved and try to help move the needle on some of these things. And I, obviously have been kind of focusing on the financing. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about that. I think what folks could, one thing I wanted to add when I was talking about the financing is really some of the challenges, just like the alignment of the different programs. And I think where we're seeing a lot of the challenges at the state level. And so I think advocacy with state representatives about, the need to really align and coordinate the various housing programs. Because right now what we're doing is we're applying to the state for this piece and applying to the state for this piece. And, several different pieces all kind of at the same state agency or 2 or 3 different state agencies, and they're not really aligned. And so we end up taking several years to get, all those funding pieces from the state. And so if the state could focus more and more, I mean, they definitely are working on it, but there's a lot more work to be done to kind of align those so that there's more of like kind of a one-stop shop type of a situation, so that it doesn't take several years to get funding, kind of from the same agency, for example. And so that's some advocacy that I think can be done. We're doing a lot of that in our industry, but I think the more voices that are really pushing for the state to streamline and coordinate their financing and funding for affordable housing, that would be really helpful. And then the other thing I think is then, advocacy at the local level too. I know there's, for example, there's a Bay Area Housing Finance Agency that's kind of just getting started, and they're looking at potentially putting a bond initiative on the ballot for more of a regional funding program to help support affordable housing more at a regional level. Because it really is a regional challenge, right? There's a lot of people that can't afford to live, say, in San Jose, and so they're commuting, but they work here. And so I think being able to kind of look at it in a broader perspective can really help kind of solve the affordable housing that the whole region is experiencing. So that's another example that people might see coming up and could do some advocacy around that. So I think that would be a great way for folks to kind of support the effort and trying to speed up the production of affordable housing in our communities.
Great. Thank you, Carolyn. There's a couple questions coming in about the Section 8 wait list, when that'll be open, and also a resource for where you can find a resource for available affordable housing. I put a link into the chat for the second question for the San Jose Housing Portal, which is a good place to start. I think the second question about the Section 8 housing wait list, Natalie, you want to try answering kind of how that works?
So I believe the Housing Authority's wait list is always open now, and you can go to their website and sign up. So maybe we can put a link to that in the chat. Let me work on that. And it's a site-based wait list.
Great, thanks, Natalie. As we're closing out too, Rachel, just any final thoughts? I think it was great, Carolyn, how you put it in context of what people can do. What do you see on the city side where residents can really get involved and help?
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. I just wanted to challenge everyone on this call to think about who you talk to and who you interact with. And I just want to pick on Nextdoor for a minute. Okay. So I think many of us are parts of communities, and you've signed up at your local thing and you have your Nextdoor. I just want to challenge everyone to take a minute and write something on Nextdoor when you hear these conversations that come up all the time, to support affordable housing and stand up to say, this is something we need in our community. And it may, it may sound scary, but there's so many examples of successful affordable housing that really build up neighborhoods. And I just want to challenge all of you to get out there and tell people this is something to support. We really need your voice.
Something to support. We really need your voice. I think that is a nice way to leave it. Couldn't agree with it more. I want to thank all of the panelists for joining us tonight. And before I say goodnight to all of you, I want to turn it over to our partners at SV at Home, who have done the heavy lifting of getting this Affordable Housing Month together and programming so many excellent events. So David, let me turn it over to you to talk to the audience.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ray. And thanks to everyone on this panel. This was super informative. Really appreciate everyone taking the time tonight. We know this is such a complicated topic, but it's so important for everyone in our community. And it's a really important piece of all of the Affordable Housing Month programming that's going on. So just real quick, as was mentioned at the top, May is Affordable Housing Month. It's a month-long, it's a celebration in a lot of ways of all of the work that's happening around affordable housing issues across Santa Clara County and the South Bay. There are over 50 different events that are happening, hosted by all kinds of different partners, including the partners tonight, Destination Home and others. You know, it's really the whole month. It's an opportunity for people to learn more about all different topics around affordable housing, to kind of discover ways that they can actually get involved and really actually engage. And there's also some fun events too, some happy hours and get-togethers and some in-person events like groundbreakings of affordable housing developments. So there's a lot going on. You know, we're almost halfway through May, but there's still a lot to come. I'm going to put in the chat the calendar of events so people can check that out and see other events that are upcoming that might be of interest. You can register. I'll also do a quick plug. Tomorrow is actually SV at Home's signature event for the month. It features a panel talking about innovative approaches for truly inclusive development, looking at how we can use affordable housing development and development in general to help invest in underserved communities. So we really hope that people will come out to that and people will check out the calendar and see all the other wonderful events that are happening. So thanks so much, Ray. Thanks for everything you guys do. There's, I know, a ton of other events that are happening focused on ways that we can help get permanent housing for our neighbors who are experiencing homelessness. There's even a filter in our calendar for events that are looking at that topic. And so there's a lot more to come, and we hope people will RSVP to events and check things out and learn and get ready to engage. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, David. And again, Rachel, Natalie, Carolyn, thank you so much for all of the work you do on behalf of this community and others. And it was great chatting with you all tonight. Really enjoyed it.